You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks, welcome to the Dangerous Liberty Podcast, where we know the only thing more dangerous than liberty is the lack thereof. I want to welcome everybody tonight. We have a very special guest who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. And folks, we're going to do things a little differently tonight. We're going to hold this kind of a more traditional interview. So if you have any questions or anything like that, make sure you just kind of hold those to the end. You can comment. I will say that if you want to throw up a super chat, we may give you special attention for that. We will definitely take care of you for that. But I want to welcome everybody and that is here now live as well as in the future. And of course, wishing everybody had a wonderful new year, a great Christmas, and we're knee deep into 2024. We got a lot of stuff going on. So, Summer, how was your week?
It was busy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Chris, how was your week back there?
It's good, brother.
Yeah?
Here.
Did you have a good Christmas?
I did. I dressed down today, too, so since people weren't looking at me.
I appreciate that. He actually stunk so bad we had to take him off camera. Sean, how was your week?
Mine's going pretty good, thanks.
That's awesome. And Patricia, I want to thank you very much for coming on. I think this is a really important topic that we're going to talk about tonight. You know what? Let's just start off with just you introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into politics, and we'll just take it from there.
Okay. Stop me if I go too far.
No, go with it.
So I am, I guess I'll start off by saying I'm a first-generation immigrant from Venezuela. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela in 1974. I came to the United States when I was 6 years old. My father got a job, and so we came here legally on an H visa, just so everyone knows. And we always planned to move back to Venezuela at some point, so we never even considered becoming Americans, going through any of that change. But I met my husband in high school.
Oh, wow.
And I knew I was going to marry him. And then at that point, I kind of knew, okay, I'm probably going to stay here. But believe it or not, my husband was open to moving to Venezuela.
Really?
And he speaks very good Spanish, just because he's interested and he's good at languages and totally makes me look like an idiot. I have to tell you, he's brilliant. But obviously Chavez got elected in 1999. We had our firstborn, and we're in Venezuela when Chavez was campaigning. And so I got to hear those ridiculous speeches of his, and I had a very bad feeling about it. Just people not understanding that he was talking about socialism. He never called it that. He called it hope and change. And he was going to end corruption. And people in Venezuela were, thinking, oh, that sounds like a really good thing. And sure enough, he got elected. And the last time that I was in Venezuela in 2001, he had only been president for a year. And already the atmosphere had changed. For the first time ever, I felt uncomfortable being by myself on the streets. And that was just after just 1 year. And I've never been back to Venezuela because of security, safety. The fact that I don't look like a typical Venezuelan and I don't speak like a typical Venezuelan, although I have an accent when I speak English. I also have an accent when I speak Spanish. It's no hope. So it's just too big of a risk. Too many people in Venezuela get kidnapped. People, if they think you have any money, and they have no problem killing you for the shoes you're wearing and things like that. So it's not worth the risk. So it's really sad. Most of my family still is in Venezuela. I have had a few that have been able to escape. But anyways, so here I am, and I ran for office because we had a president running here in the United States of America in 2008 that sounded a lot like Hugo Chavez. And when I heard him campaigning, I was very concerned about the liberty and freedoms that I hold dear here in the United States. And I had become a citizen in 2004, was already, I guess you'd say, an educated voter. And I tried my best to alert folks that, hey, this does not sound good. This sounds exactly like the person who had ruined Venezuela and destroyed it. And then after he did get elected, I did everything in my power to get involved in my local politics to shore up our freedom. I started the Jefferson County Tea Party group called We the People of Jefferson County. It's one of the few Tea Party groups that still exists, is still thriving. And I became a recruiter of candidates. I helped find good people to run. And then I would, of course, volunteer in their campaigns to help them get elected. And then came that fateful election in which could not find anyone to run against the delegate that was representing me. And at the very last second got talked into running, even though I had told people for many years, people had said, you should consider running. And I'm like, I'm a homeschooling mom. That's my number one job. My kids are my priority. I'm sorry, I can't dedicate myself to that. But I was talked into it. And I did campaign as hard as I could. I had no money, no name ID, and no support.
Right.
I had 2 PAC checks in that campaign. And I lost by 131 votes.
Oh, wow.
Which is like, it sent shockwaves.
Now,
Like
what year was this that you
this
first
was
ran?
2014.
Yep.
The Republicans took over in that election cycle, but
Here in West Virginia.
here in West Virginia.
Yep.
But in the fact that I came that close and I had not been given any help or support, it caused many folks to go like, who is this woman? Who
Right.
is this housewife? Wait a second. So when I decided to run for that Senate seat that I knew was going to be open in 2 years, unlike that first one where I was talked into it, this time I felt God was calling me to it. And I really enjoyed the going door knocking and talking to folks and that part of it. So I just door knocked, and I started in early March of 2015, and I went knocking on doors from Monday through Saturday.
Wow.
After homeschooling, I would change my clothes, go door knocking from 3 o'clock until the sun went down, until that election in November of 2016.
Wow.
And I ended up beating this person who had beaten me in the delegate race, decided to run against me in the Senate race, and I beat him by over 5,000 votes.
Wow.
Wow.
I was just about to ask you before you answered the question, how did you fit in door knocking with being a mom and a homemaker and homeschooling? But you made it happen.
It was a very interesting year and a half. So like I learned to, so we had to start homeschooling at a set time, which most of the years that I homeschooled, one of the things I loved about it is how freeing the schedule is, and you can be very flexible. While campaigning, I can't be that flexible.
Sure.
So we had to start on time in the morning. I had to finish by 2 o'clock so I could change. I usually would do meals that would feed us for several days, like soups and stews and casseroles and things like that. And then I just went out, and I will confess, I made my children go door knocking with me. They all had to take turns. I had 5. I door knocked 6 days a week, so it was only.
That's a force multiplier.
That's how you got to spend time with them, too.
I did, and they learned a lot. They probably learned more than you could possibly ever teach them in school in civics.
Yeah.
But it was just an amazing experience. And once you're out there and you're meeting folks, like the time just flies. Like I can't even tell you, when I talk about door knocking, I tell people I'm out there making friends. I'm out there meeting all my neighbors in my community, and I'm making friends, because what you find out when you're out there talking one-on-one with folks is that they are not Republican or Democrat. They're not one side or another side. Most folks are ordinary, hardworking people who want to be left alone by the government. Yeah. They want to be safe and secure.
Right.
And we can agree that, children should be taken care of. We can agree that the infrastructure needs to be in place so that we can all go to work and to shop and things like that. We can agree on the vast majority of things. If all you do as an elected official is read the newspapers and watch media, like you're not going to have any idea what the real citizens care about. So to this day, it's still my favorite thing to do. If I could just door knock and not have to do the rest of the politics, it'd be great.
Well, I mean, even after all this time, I mean, you're clearly very passionate about it. You're a very genuine person. And, just from the time, folks, we didn't get a lot of time to sit and talk with her like I wanted to prior to this. But, from the moment she walked in the door and just being able to talk to her, I mean, again, it's the first time I've met her. Very genuine, very passionate about this, and it made me more excited about doing this interview and talking to her. And
Now I want to go door knock.
she told me on it. Like, make sure you call us next time. So, I mean, you were a stay-at-home mom. You have 5 kids, folks. If you haven't looked through the description and read her bio, I highly recommend that you do. You guys kind of run a small farm too, right?
It's a little hobby farm.
Oh, that's perfect. But again, you're teaching your kids to be independent, and
Self-sufficient. That's the word I like.
self-sufficient.
Yes.
Which is something that
We
a
talk
lot
about
of
a lot.
kids, we do talk about that a lot, both at the individual level, but even, as a parent, how important that is to make sure that your kids are self-sufficient. But on top of that, being here in West Virginia, I love what's going on in West Virginia politically, even since, we moved here at the end of 2011. And it has changed so drastically. I was just having a conversation the other day that kind of brought a little pride to me the other day. Somebody was talking about West Virginia versus, Florida and Texas. And as far as kind of that independent Republican spirit, if you want to call it that, the conservative spirit, Texas, which I'm originally from Texas, and Florida get a lot of the
Media
attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think West Virginia is kind of that little place that most people don't realize. We're in the same boat. I think I guarantee you we are definitely more conservative in general than Texas for sure, probably Florida as well. And I think we need to continue to push that in that direction. And it's just better for everybody. I love the West Virginia spirit, how everybody is so fiercely independent and they do want to be self-sufficient. If we can just get government out of our lives, it just just like Ronald Reagan said, the worst thing you'll ever hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Exactly.
And we just need to get them out of our lives. Unless they're here for a podcast, I don't even want politicians near me, right?
Ideally, the ideal is that we take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
It's funny how far we have come from what the founders started. And one of the things that both depresses me but also inspires me is, reading accounts of what the United States was like in the 1900s. So we're talking just 100 years ago, 120 years ago. And the government did not feel that they needed to protect you from bad decisions. What a difference it has made in 120 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need to return to that.
And not only did they not feel that they needed to protect you from bad decisions, but more importantly today, and it's kind of the same coin, but they know that they can make better decisions than you in every aspect of their life. And when you got people in DC, you have people that are these rich elites that have no idea what it is to go out, wake up every day and kill yourself to make the money to provide the life that you want for your family. And they want to tell you how to live when there's no way that they've never been in your shoes. They don't know what it's like to be, the average middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, whatever it is. They cannot even relate to the average person. And yet they have so many answers for us. It is absolutely, it's the height of, arrogance, and it's crazy that people sit around and talk like that, believe that, and then can take themselves seriously. It really is.
Well, but I want to remind you, those folks get elected.
They do.
Right.
And I still feel like the number one role that I have is educating voters. If you do not take the time to really get to know the person that's running, you really have to blame yourself.
Sure.
Like we don't have any excuse anymore.
Yeah.
There's all these different ways to get to know the person that's running for office. You don't have to just rely on the mailers. You do not have to just
Or
rely.
if you recognize a name on a ballot, which I'm sure we've all been guilty of, or if
Oh,
you recognize
please.
the Republican versus Democrat,
Yes,
Yeah.
and again, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is, and especially in the local elections. Get to know the person that's running. Every single person that's running to represent you has to live in your area locally, so you can meet with them. You can literally see them, meet with them at a local coffee shop. I have constituents who reach out to me and says, I would like to talk to you about some questions. Okay, sure. Would you like to meet at Black Dog Coffee? And we will sit down and talk, and I will answer their questions directly. Even better, I go to their doors.
Yeah.
But you can do that. You have the right to ask your elected official to meet with you and to talk to you and to answer your questions. So do not hesitate. So please let your folks know, let everyone know, especially if you care about freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you touched on something earlier. You were talking about back in Chavez's election, and of course, elections since, these sound bites that end up winning elections. And, that's the problem that we have today. And what I love is that we're seeing these long form conversations like this, whether all the other podcasts that you have out there, where you have some really smart politicians on both sides that are starting to get onto these podcasts and sitting down to where you can actually talk about the depth of what they're proposing, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and you get into some of those nuanced details that, when you're looking at somebody doing an interview on Fox News, CNN, or whatever it is, you got 3 or 4 minutes, and there's no way to get anything other than a couple of sound bites out. And, unfortunately, we have a lot of busy voters. I don't even want to say uninformed voters or anything else, but it's super easy to sell yourself and to get votes with these little short sound bites that sound great, but no one gets to probe them on the second and third order of effects, mostly negative, on some of these things. It's real easy to say, hey, you know what? Everybody should have free college. As a matter of fact, all of you that have signed up for all this debt, we should just, we're going to take care of that for you. Not understanding what that's going to do to the economy, what that's going to do to how that is completely unfair to all the people that have paid their dues. And not only that, all it's going to do is drive up costs for colleges to begin with, because if they're going to get paid no matter what, if now we've turned colleges and universities into an FDIC where they are guaranteed to get paid, all they're going to do is continue to hike up those. But it's the little things like that nobody wants to discuss and actually prove their concepts and prove these ideas and actually get questioned on them.
Well, I will tell you that more voters should be asking the folks running for office, what is the role of government? Such a simple question.
Yeah.
No one asks you that.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, it's because the government's involved in higher education that higher education has skyrocketed.
I agree.
It's because government has gotten involved in healthcare that healthcare has skyrocketed and become
with less positive outcomes, by the way.
Exactly.
On both of those. We spend more on healthcare in the United States. We have the least amount of positive outcomes of any other nation. Just about the same thing when it comes to school, universities, colleges. We're paying more for education. You guys see we have the most worthless degrees possible because of what's being pushed in these. And not only that, we're producing generation after generation that are more reliant on government, that are producing less for this country. And that's a negative to all of us.
Well, I have a question then.
Yes.
What is the role of government?
Thank you for asking that question. So obviously, everyone's going to have their own opinion, but my belief is that the role of government is to provide the infrastructure for you to be able to raise a family, work, take care of yourself. That is essentially, I guess you call it the summary. So if you think about infrastructure, we're not just talking roads. We're talking obviously a mode of paying for things that is secure, the ability to be able to protect yourself so that you can go from point A to point B and do the things that you need to do to provide for your family. There should be a judicial system to ensure that protection, to ensure that your property is your property and that it's defended. So that infrastructure, that's the only role the government should really have. And if you look at the things that the Constitution says, this is for the federal government, this is for the local, it's essentially providing that infrastructure. Everything else was left up to you as to how you would want to do it.
Right.
So how you want to raise your family, what type of education, what type of health care, the decisions that, I want them to learn this, and this is my priority for my family. All of that should be left up to you, the individual. And really, the government had no role in it in our Constitution. It has all been added on and expounded upon by what I would call progressives, which have been on both sides of the political spectrum.
Agreed. Yeah, we have a lot of progressives in the Republican Party. There's no doubt about that. And I think that's one thing that's often left. Now, I will say, generally speaking, if, going back to what you're talking about on, when you're voting, I would generally say that typically, if I don't know what this person is, I got a D or an R. I'm going to go with the R because it's usually the least amount of damage. But again, you should know those people, and you need to get to know their policies as well. There's no doubt about it.
And just to challenge you a little bit, I will tell you. So when you have a state like West Virginia,
Sure.
that is the majority party is Republican, and don't see that changing anytime soon. Then it's even more important to get involved in the primary election and get educated in the primary
get the
election,
right candidate up there.
because you very often do have a choice between the Republicans. And there in most races, there's 2, 3, sometimes 5.
Right.
And it does make a really huge difference. So again, yes, you're right. Generally, between a D and an R, I will support the R. But just realize the primary election, which happens quickly, okay? It's going to happen in May. Get involved, find out now. And actually, if you don't have a good conservative constitutionalist running, you can still have time to recruit between now and January 21st.
Well, that's definitely something that Summer and I have talked about, and we've definitely gotten more involved with local politics in the last couple of years, and understanding and seeing how important it is and how much those local politicians can affect your life. It's so easy to get caught up in the federal elections, mainly the presidential or even some, Senate or Congress elections. But you're absolutely right. It is so important to get involved in understanding with the mess we've had in the school boards here.
I think even we've talked about how COVID really highlighted the fact of how important local and state
Yes.
government is as well, and how your choices affected your daily life at that point.
Exactly.
Whereas, everyone's always concerned and involved in the presidential election, but the local and state government has so much more effect on your daily life.
That's exactly correct.
It really does. Absolutely. Yep. So, one of the things that we were going to talk about tonight was, campus carry. And this is something that school safety in general is something that's been near and dear to our hearts. Like we were telling you before, several years ago, we started Archangel Counter Threat Solutions with the intent behind making sure that we could provide security, consulting, and working with churches, schools to bring another level of security, not even necessarily introducing the portions of armed security. But there's so much that we could be doing. My background is security. I was in the military for a really long time. Then I worked for the Department of State in many different capacities, working security, both here as well as overseas, different embassies, consulates. And, it blows my mind that right now we still have a standard of how we build schools, the security standards or the lack thereof that we have still to this day, compared to, it really hasn't changed in the last 10 years. And, one of the,
compared to a federal building.
exactly. And that's one of the things that is absolutely insane to me, that we think bureaucrats and everything that they're doing is so much more important than our kids. At the end of the day, when we have, these active shooting events and these crazies out there that get firearms in one form or another, I was actually thinking about this earlier today. If everybody remembers, when active shooting started becoming a thing, it was post offices. You were going postal, right? That was the thing to be said. But it's easy to see, to make the calculation where we go from post offices and different businesses to schools. At the end of the day, when somebody wants to target a person, we have these absolute lunatics that want to do as much damage as possible. They're always looking for target value and vulnerability. And what we have in these schools is a conglomeration of the most valuable things in every person's life. And for some reason, we want to make sure that they are all piled together and the absolute most vulnerable as possible. And it just drives me crazy that we as a society haven't looked at that, haven't looked at making sure that, when you build a federal building, there are security standards in place of how the doors work, of making sure that those areas are compartmentalized. And we do none of that. We do none of that with schools. And it's just absolute insane. And then when you try to push initiatives where you do get local law enforcement or you hire trained in armed security, people have a real problem with that. And it really does appear to me.
We don't want our kids, going to school and seeing cops everywhere
Yeah.
or being scared.
Because
or,
an active shooter, seeing an active shooter is much better.
Right.
It's insane to me that we still look at this, and it really does appear to me. The only conclusion you can draw from this is that there are a lot of folks out there, including some politicians, that would rather have the issue than come up with a solution. And, I am really glad when, we ended up talking about what you wanted to discuss tonight as far as campus carry. What is currently the law here in West Virginia regarding campus carry?
So campus carry, we actually just passed it last year.
Okay.
Very grateful. I can tell you I supported it every single time we tried to pass it in the past. It's essentially just clarifying that your right to defend yourself doesn't end when you step onto a college campus.
Right.
So there are many of us that feel that, that right shall not be infringed actually means something.
Yeah.
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 And unfortunately, because of many colleges and higher ed institutions, I'm going to just say it, they want the easiest way out, and they feel that for liability reasons or because they're liberal.
And they're ideologically opposed to the idea. I mean, that's part of the issue. Yeah.
They feel that they can make rules like you're not allowed to carry a pistol, you're not allowed to be armed on campuses.
Yep.
And, again, first of all, that was never the law. There was no law or statute that said that they could do that. And so they were just kind of taking advantage of the law being silent. And to this day, I know that there were many people carrying on campus,
Sure.
even before we passed this law. But this just clarifies you do have that right. Now, I find it really interesting. There have been many higher ed institutions who have complained since we passed this, and they're claiming that we're losing students, and there are professors wanting to leave the state because we have this policy. And by the way, I should emphasize, again, it's a constitutional thing. It really is the entire United
Right.
States of America.
Yeah.
But second of all, that to be frank, like if you feel so strongly that you want to be on a campus that can restrict your freedom from having a gun or the freedom of other individuals from having a gun, there are private higher ed institutions that can do that. They can say, the private institutions, we can't dictate to them.
Sure.
I'm sure you know. So they have choices. It's not like we're taking away your choices.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned this. Those same liberal, everything from people that are running these higher education facilities, they were the same ones that were trying to force everybody to get a vaccine.
That's right.
And we're like, oh, if you don't like it, you can go to another place. And they had no problem losing students. They
Or
had no
staff.
problem losing staff over that whatsoever. But the moment that it is actually, we have a right that is enumerated in the Constitution, which, by the way, doesn't really matter. That is a right given to us by God that we just happen to outline in that Constitution, that you have the right to defend yourself. Now, when we look back over the course of our history, there are places and times where, even going way back, where there was, there were places where you weren't allowed to be armed. But the difference is, folks, the difference in those places is you had people there armed to protect you. And that is the big difference. If you're not going to provide 24/7 security for personnel, then we are left with the right and responsibility to both arm ourselves and to protect ourselves and our family and anyone around us. And that's what these higher education institutes are just failing to see time and time again.
Yes, and I will tell you that, again, I supported it every single time. I will continue to support it every single time. I actually think it's going to end up being something that helps our higher ed institutions.
I agree.
And I'm very, very grateful that we finally got the votes to do it. It was just a matter of having enough votes.
So let me ask you this, as coming from your background, what made you want to take up this? What made you passionate about making sure that we had West Virginians that were able to arm themselves on campus?
So I have children and they're going to college. And I have to tell you that I made absolutely certain my children had a way to protect themselves when they went off to college. And I don't really care what the rules were. I'm not going to send off my child and not know that they're going to have some ability to protect themselves. And so that's clearly where I stand.
Right.
Additionally, it makes, I don't know how to say it in politically correct way. It is offensive. The other side loves to talk about being offended all the time. It is offensive to me that you are dictating that, an individual cannot have any choices when it comes to that crucial issue of, self-preservation. As a woman, I will tell you, we have a huge disadvantage if
Sure.
we're ever in an altercation
Absolutely.
with a man. And I fought just to give the right of 16-year-olds to carry pepper spray. I don't know if you knew this, but no one under the age of 18 was allowed to carry pepper spray legally in the state of West Virginia.
I wasn't worried
I
about
didn't
that.
know
I
that
wasn't
Which
aware
is,
of that.
I thought, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I had to fight for the right for individuals to carry pepper spray under 18. And it took me years to get that through.
Wow.
And it's just come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's just offensive that I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a president of an institution. I don't care whatever your opinions are. It's offensive. You're telling me, that I cannot protect myself. No,
Yeah.
you do not have the right to do that. And like you said, it's a God-given right.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
Hey, Gary, I got a little question for a little clarification here.
Sure.
So, open carry on campuses, does that mean only concealed, or is that open carry as well? It doesn't.
I believe it's concealed carry.
okay, so again, West Virginia
Is an open carry state.
is an
Yeah.
open carry state,
Correct.
constitutionally, the whole state. Okay, and then now this clarification that we did in campus carry allows you to carry concealed.
Okay, perfect. I
No
just needed that
problem.
clarification just to know.
No, and I'm glad that they asked that question. And I will also point out that to carry concealed in the state of West Virginia, you still have to get a carry license.
Correct, okay.
Which
Yeah.
I can argue.
No,
that's-
Well,
it's
in
not
West
constitutional
Virginia,
carry.
in West
Yeah.
Virginia, we have a constitutional carry.
Yeah.
Do
we
you?
have constitutional carry, which means you can carry open
No,
anywhere
no.
You
in
can
the
carry
United,
concealed
here in
too.
West Virginia, you can actually conceal carry as well
without your license.
without a license.
Oh,
Yes.
in West
Yes.
Virginia.
In West
Yes.
Virginia.
You're
Yes.
right. It's
Yeah.
in order to be able to travel outside.
That's,
the state.
that's
You're
correct.
right. You're
Yep,
right.
yep. 100%.
Yeah, they changed that right around COVID or right before or
I
right
think
after.
It was.
Anyway,
No,
it was
before,
pretty recent.
like 20.
I want to say it was like 2017,
I don't
2018.
think it's been that long.
I think no. Okay, so the constitutional carry passed in 2015. It was the year I was campaigning for office. That's why
I
I
don't
remember.
think it went into effect till 2016.
2016. That's
Gotcha.
probably right.
Are we right?
No,
think-
it was way after that.
Okay.
That you no longer had to have that concealed carry license to carry
Sean,
concealed.
look that up. Apparently, this is a
Yeah.
big
West
issue. We want to get the
Virginia.
date right.
It was
Right.
it was more recent than that you did.
But
that-
irregardless,
I still have my concealed carry license because it is reciprocated
Yep.
by a lot of states, which, we can thank Patrick Morrissey for working really hard
Yes,
on getting
I
that,
love that.
reciprocity from a lot of different states.
And by the
but-
way, he's running for governor. I just want to point that out.
Yep. So I keep my concealed carry license current for that, but you'd no longer have to have that license in the state of West Virginia to carry concealed, and that was a more recent development.
Was it?
okay, you're right, baby.
But you are right. You are right. That we can carry.
Whatever summer says. That's correct.
It wasn't 2016.
It's
I think it was.
2019.
2019,
I believe. Yeah.
2019.
2019.
I knew
That's
it
what
was-
I was saying.
I knew it was like right
Okay.
before
I was
COVID.
just, I'm dyslexic, so I was turning the
Numbers.
nine
turning the
upside
9
down.
into a 6. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, baby, you were right. Good job. Yeah, we talk about the fact that campuses aren't safe, especially for women, which is absolutely true, by the way. There is a lot of folks that push that narrative a lot with a lot of other initiatives to push that come along with that. But the idea of training and giving a firearm to protect themselves for those vulnerable women is somehow always taken off the table.
mean,
it's
it's
not
just-
even an option.
It's a soft target if
Absolutely.
not otherwise. I mean, it's a
And I want to point out to you that until we passed that clarification, individuals felt who just happened to cross a corner of the campus, and they're carrying and they're totally legal.
Yeah.
The minute they step onto the campus could have, actually face criminal charges.
and they may not have even realized they were crossing.
And they may
a
not
corner.
even have realized. And many of these campuses are in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're scattered all over. So again, it just really was.
Which is one of the other problems with gun-free zones, right? So if I'm carrying and I have to go pick up my kid at school, I think West Virginia recently passed another
Yes.
to where they actually, if you're going to pick up your kid and you have a gun on you, you can pick up your kid and stay in the car, don't get out, all those good things. But, that's not the case in so many even Republican states where we still have these gun-free zones in place that essentially at any point in time could, take a person just picking up their kid and turn them into a felon really quick and take away their rights to carry a gun forever. So, those are all things that I think need to be looked at. And I think at this point, hopefully the idea of these gun-free zones and how ineffective, not only ineffective, but how they are a beacon for insanity, needs to be looked at. And hopefully, at a federal level, we have a president, we have a Congress that takes a look at this and readdresses that, because that is something, and that's one of the biggest problems that we have when it comes to, these school shootings. That's one of the problems. If people were worried about parents picking up their kids with guns in the car or guns on their person, they would have to think twice about that. And currently, it's not an issue.
Patricia, were you an actual school teacher at a school at some point too?
For just a year and a half, I will tell you that it was always my dream to be a teacher and to teach at school from the time I was 11 years old. I loved it, love education. But after just a year, I hate to say it that way, but I became,
She's like, that's it.
I became pregnant in my second year.
Oh, gotcha.
And once they put that baby girl in my arms, I knew
Yeah.
I'm going to
You're
be the
staying
one
home
raising
with
them
her.
and taking care of them. But honestly, I don't know what to tell you. I am passionate about education. Education, public education, is what got me where I am. So I came to this country not speaking the language, with speech issues. I had speech pathology issues, needed speech therapy. It took me longer to graduate from speech therapy than from the ESOL classes. And I went from that kid to, someone who is now an elected official. And it's because I had a great
Who
education.
homeschools her own children.
Who homeschooled I last one just finished school.
Oh,
I'm so
wow.
excited. But anyway, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that education that I received. But one of the things that I experienced in my own life directly, I'm one of 5. I had 4 brothers. And we were raised in the same family with the same parents, same, family income, same family circumstances, same family priorities, same schools, attending the exact same public schools. And my education was vastly different than my brother's education. So I was fortunate I had this teacher. I learned to read and I became a very good student and good grades. And, I'm not going to brag, but, on a path, right? My brother had a different teacher, and this was 2nd grade, and he did not become a confident reader. He got labeled as being, dummy. And he was put on a path and a trajectory that was very different. And he absorbed that and considered himself a dummy. And
Became part of his identity.
it
huh?
became part of his identity.
Yeah.
And his education in the same schools, same family, same situation, totally different. Now, fortunately, he did overcome that. He did go to college. He did graduate. Thank goodness for parents who really cared, wouldn't let him fail, and would not let him,
Give up.
give up.
Yeah.
But it was a really stark lesson to me about what a difference it makes. And one of the things I really wanted to do as a teacher in the public education system is really making certain that every child got that opportunity. And I was really passionate about, like, it's the ones that struggle that I really care, whatever I need to do to overcome and to help them overcome. But I only did it for, again, 2 years. I left. I understand that it's really hard. There are many teachers like myself who really want their children to succeed and love their students and would do whatever they can to help them. But the system overall, and I got to see this because I worked for years in the deputy superintendent's office. While I was in college, that's what I did as a part-time job. The system is set up to not prioritize that.
Right.
And that's a big problem. And when you talk about a system that is really, public education is the closest thing that we have had to socialism in the United States of America for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
It is a system that it gets funded no matter what the results are.
Right.
It gets funded no matter how good it does its job or how badly it does its job. Most of the employees in that system are protected. There's a ton of promises and guarantees. And what you have is a socialist system. And what does socialism do? It treats everyone the same.
Right.
It's cookie cutter.
Removes incentive.
One size fits all.
Suppresses those that are trying to excel.
And the worst thing in that system is anyone who doesn't fit in. And it doesn't matter if it's on the upper scale, like they're brilliant, or on the lower scale, they struggle,
They get
have
brought
problems.
down.
It does not matter. In that system, if you don't fit in this mode, you're a problem. And I have people in the education system all the time telling me, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money. We can't fix the problems in public education unless you give us more money. Well, money is not going to fix any of those problems.
No.
The one size fits all is the problem. The system is set up that way. And I will tell you that if we don't do something about public education, this country has no future. And I hate to sound so dire, but it's
No,
the
but I
reason
mean, the children are the future.
they are. It is literally, what are we facing
Yeah,
in
and
30 years?
and you know, the kids that are graduating school today are not smarter than the kids that were graduating school 10 years ago. And you know, you talked about the fact that we're looking for the same outcome no matter what. The same thing goes with teachers as well. Like, you have some teachers that are trying to make a difference.
That
And-
really want to make a difference for those students
and
that can't
their
overcome.
efforts are suppressed and looked down upon because they're making other teachers that, you know, they're happy doing the curriculum, doing the bare minimum.
Or they're so overwhelmed with the amount of students in their classroom, or some of the circumstances that they're
Yes.
thrown into.
Yeah.
You know.
But they do get, teachers get punished for trying too hard, working
Yeah.
too hard, asking for too much, complaining. Like, it's just, oh my goodness. I don't even know. I can tell you it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. But there are very few legislators that volunteer to do work in education. I actually did and still consider it my priority. Even though I'm no longer in the education committee, I could tell you I still introduce plenty of bills to try to help and reform things. But to me, it's the number one thing we need to.
Is there any one single reform that you would look at in one of your bills that you think would make the greatest impact on the current system?
Well, if I had a magic wand and I actually could make this happen, I would make the public education system like the private education system. So not regulated and with consequences if you don't get the results that you need.
Well, one of the committee assignments I see you on here and I think this plays right into that, is the school choice. So talk to us a little bit about your thoughts and the advantages or the possible advantages of offering school choice to kids here in West Virginia.
Okay, so there's a reason for why I'm on that committee. I learned very quickly that trying to reform public education was not going to be successful unless there's some pressure put on public education. And that is actually when I became a school choice advocate. I didn't go into it as an advocate for that, but I tried to change public education and found it's just, they're not going to accept change.
And in this
So-
case, you see school choice, you see competition as the catalyst for change.
Absolutely. And a needed competition. So obviously, my family, we made the sacrifices that we needed to make in order for me to stay home and raise my children. That included moving to West Virginia, where it was cheaper, and doing with a lot less because we didn't have my income. But we were able to do that, and I'm very grateful I had that opportunity.
Yeah.
There are thousands of families who already choose to homeschool or are able to find the means to educate their children privately, or something different than public education. But in the state of West Virginia, when I got elected, there was no other real school choice other than those who had the means. West Virginia had no charter schools. West Virginia had no funding for any other options. And actually, even when it came to public schools, was very restrictive, would not allow you to even transfer from one public school to the other in most cases. There were exceptions, but it was very, very difficult to get those transfers. So I'm very proud of the work that I have done to bring school choice to the state of West Virginia. So I legalized charter schools, and we have now 3 brick and mortar charter schools and 2 virtual statewide charter schools, and more are coming. And then I also passed the bill called the Hope Scholarship.
I was going to say, were you instrumental in that as well?
It was my bill. And it was the first universal ESA in the entire United States of America. West Virginia was number 1. I loved what the other states had done, which was to provide these education savings accounts for students that had special needs, students that were victims of bullying, for this or for that. Sometimes they would do it for a geographical area. So these areas have an option of education savings accounts. And every time I heard about those things that states had done, I was like, what a great idea, but why are you limiting it? Why is it only these students? And what about that student who just right outside, that qualification? And it always pained me that there was a difference in treating the students. And again, I know that government should not be the one making the decisions as to who qualifies for help and who doesn't. So as long as we're funding public education, because if we were to choose sometime down the path to stop funding public education and let the parents keep their money and decide what is best, like that to me is the ultimate goal.
Right.
But as long as we're funding public education, those dollars belong to that student, not to a building and not to a system. And if that parent believes that that child needs something different than public school that they are districted in, which is an artificial line that they draw saying you belong to this school because you happen to live here. If a parent decides that's not what is best for my child, that parent should be able to decide this is what's best for my child, and that money followed that child. So that is what the Universal Education Savings Account is.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there also a recent development in being able to transfer schools as well?
So
I had seen some talk of it, and
the open enrollment passed in our initial school choice bill in 2019, but we cleaned up the language a little bit to make it more transparent, because we were finding that there were school districts that were finding ways to stop the open enrollment, the transferring of students. So we made it more transparent, so it's a little harder for those school districts to prohibit parents from transferring from one public school to the other. And then in this last year's session, this is my opinion, but we stopped the discriminating of students who transfer from being punished if they want to participate in extracurricular activities. So until last year, if you transferred and you were in high school, you were prohibited from participating in extracurricular activities for a year.
Were they trying to do that to prevent students from transferring just to get on a better football team or whatever?
Exactly. That
It's
is
still their choice.
Again,
Some of that happened actually down southern West Virginia. There was a pretty good sized football team that just like decimated everybody else because of
Yeah.
that. But
Well,
I will tell you,
It's America. Go where you want.
yeah.
if if your perception is that parents and coaches and schools, we suspect that they're going to make bad decisions and that their priorities is a kid getting into a sport and that is what they care
Still
about
not
the
the
most.
government's role.
If that's your perception, I mean, I think that's really sad to think that that is the majority of people and that we're going to set policy based on some bad characters who have, priorities that is not what's best
And
for
it's
the
not
child.
even like the most nefarious of priorities, by the way. Like, I want my kid to go to this. And by the way, like, what percentage of a school, of the average school, plays football? What percentage of
Right.
them? Like, so you're going to make sure that all these other kids are negatively affected because you're trying to dissuade some. Again, it's not even bad behavior that you want your kid to go to the good football team. That's not the worst thing in the world.
And
That's
I
part
totally
of your
interrupted
choice.
you, so sorry I took you off track. You were saying that
You
this year you
interrupted me. You didn't
clarified the
mind that.
language. I don't mind.
No. So it's again, I love talking about this because I almost never get a chance to really explain my point
Good.
of view of it.
Well, we love
but
it.
it's to me, again, if your priority is that child and what is best for that child, and what is best for that child is to play football, like, okay. The parent knows best. Yes, are there going to be people who take advantage of that? Yes. There are people who will take advantage of every loophole there ever exists, and there's a loophole to every law that we pass.
Well, you just said something a minute ago that really struck me when you said that, are we going to make policy based on a few bad actors? And that applies to every
Everything.
right we have. Are we going to make
Exactly.
Second Amendment policy based on a few bad
We sure
people?
try.
They do, which is
They
wrong.
We sure try.
But it's
You know?
wrong.
It is.
It is.
Yep.
I mean, so I have chosen for myself, I will trust the citizens. I will trust the citizens. I will trust the parents. I think overall, most parents are going to make decisions of what's best for their child based on what's best for that child.
Well, the reality is that every time that we have, and we can look at the history of our country, when we have looked to preserve and protect individual liberty, it has the greatest positive outcomes on the greater good, right? But when we start trying to make policies that prioritize the quote unquote greater good, it has the greatest negative effect on the individuals as well as the greater good. And that's what this country was founded on, was making sure that we preserved individual liberties and wasn't even considering what, the minor couple of percent, the bad actors out there, how they can take advantage of it. That's why we have a justice system. That's why we have other penalizing systems in place, whether it's education, whether it's state and local as well. But the fact of the matter is we should be going after those folks and making sure that behavior doesn't continue, which we've taken the complete opposite approach. We are constantly taking care of criminals. We are creating victims nonstop, and then we remove the rights of victims in every category. It's not just self-defense. It's in a multitude of different categories to be able to protect themselves. Just again, like the idea that we live in a country where, I'm sending my kid to this school that my tax dollars are paying for, and I see another school around the block that is doing much better. And the idea that you're not even going to let me put my kid in that school. That is, it's crazy. It's crazy. It is the opposite of freedom and liberty. It really is.
And I want to point out, and this is, of course, arguments I used with my fellow legislators who did not see things the way I saw them. It's like those with means who want their kid in that better school or who want their child to be in that better football team, they're going to move.
They're going to buy a house there.
In the area, they're going to do whatever they have to do. They will go to the court system and they will sue to get their child on the team. Those with means always have that ability. Yeah. What we're doing, and I believe this is good policy as a state, is we're actually making the playing field level where every single person has that opportunity.
Now, I do have a question about the Hope Scholarship, and this is out of my own personal curiosity and knowledge. Can that be used toward funding a homeschooling curriculum of your choice?
Yes.
Okay. Because when the Hope Scholarship was first released, there was a lot of back and forth on, Facebook groups. No, it can't be used for that and has to go to a private school or it has to go to
So that's the difference between an ESA and a voucher, and it's why I went with the ESA instead of a voucher. Vouchers is just funding private education, and other states have now adopted the universal idea, but they've done it universal vouchers.
Yeah.
So no, it's definitely able to be used for homeschool curriculum. It's able to be used for a micro school or learning pod. It's able to be used in a hybrid system. Again, you, the parent, decide. And
As a parent, thank you so much for doing that. That's amazing.
Well-
and for West Virginia to be the first state, that's even
that was awesome.
Yeah.
I am very proud of that. I have to point out to you that one of the greatest satisfactions that I have received. So I, of course, got a lot of hate and a lot of people accusing me of hating public schools and trying to destroy them and all this nonsense, because that's what it is. But receiving emails from public school teachers who are taking advantage of the Hope Scholarship for their child, and it might just be one out of their 3 children, but they have written to me and thanked me and said, this has been such a lifesaver. My child was suffering. My child was being bullied. My child needed to escape, and I don't have the money to be able to afford a private education. And because of what you did, I now got them into a better situation. And that, to me, it's just like all the naysayers and all the attacks just so
Melts away.
Just totally melts
Yeah.
away. It's wonderful.
I wasn't even planning on bringing this up tonight, but
Uh-oh.
I am very curious because there is a lot. Number one, there's a lot of hatred in this country in many different areas, mainly from both federal and local governments toward homeschooling. I think there's a lot of propaganda being pushed against it, just utter nonsense. And there is a clear campaign against homeschooling. As someone that raised 5 kids that you said some of them are going to college right now.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds like the outcomes were good there. What do you have to say about that? What are some of those stereotypes that, you would like to make sure that people aren't listening to?
Well, thank you for asking that question. When I first started homeschooling, it wasn't as popular as it is now. There were less choices. And I was terrified that I was going to mess it up. And I had everyone, including my parents and my in-laws, saying, your kids are not going to be socialized and they're not going to know how to deal with other kids and you're hurting them and they need to get away from you, that you shouldn't be around them all the time. And anyways, I will tell you, so it was a very intimidating and scary prospect. And I had 2 children with special needs. And even though I had been a teacher, I was not a special ed teacher and I was not a preschool teacher. And I was absolutely terrified. Like, I don't know how to teach them to read. I was going to educate kids in middle school where they already know that. So I had to learn it. I had to research. I had to find out a way. And especially with my special needs students, it took a lot of time to drive them to get all the therapies that they needed, because I no longer could dump it on the public school system and have them take care of
One-stop
it.
shop. Yeah.
Right.
But number one, because no one loves my children more than I do, I did what I needed to do, whatever that meant, whatever sacrifice that, you do what you have to do. Number 2, because I am educating them myself, who best to know what their weaknesses and their strengths are? Who best to know what motivates them and what doesn't? And let them find the best way so that they can love education wherever it is that they are. Number 3, that whole idea of homeschoolers not being socialized and needing to get out, like, I can't even express to you. I had to say, no, we're not doing things, because there are so many choices of things that you could be involved in. My children volunteered. My children were involved in church activities. We were part of 4-H. We were active members of the community. And they got to do things that public school students do not get to do, because we had the ability and the freedom at the time, and I could set my schedule around those priorities and those things. They all did sports. They all got to hang out with kids and have play dates and sleepovers and go to camp and all those wonderful things. And somehow they managed to do well. I will tell you, so I was an unschooler, homeschooler. After the first few years, I started letting my kids choose their curriculum, and it was scattered all over the place. So it was not one set curriculum, somebody else saying, this is what your fourth grader should be doing. I let them go with me to the homeschool conferences and pick out, you have to pick out a math, a history, all the different subjects, and let them pick it out. And they would sometimes totally shock me. Like they would pick textbooks that were way more advanced than their level, but that's what they wanted. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do. And guess what happened in that crazy, totally uncoordinated situation? Because my children picked their own curriculum and what they were interested in, they challenged themselves more than I ever could have challenged them. And the things that interested them, because they were interested in it, I didn't have to fight with them. They wanted to learn it. What a crazy concept that instead of you have to do this just because I say so, it's like, no, this is what I want to learn. This is what interests me. And some of them would pick things that were colorful. Some of them were like totally fine with a black and white book, and some of them like worksheets. Some of them, it's like once they learn it, they don't want to repeat it over and over and over again. And because I followed their lead, school was not something that was not a battle.
You cultivated their interests.
And you know what? All 5 of my children, including the ones with special needs, have graduated and love school, love learning. And the 2 that had special needs, I had them assessed. They get all this therapy. You have to go through all the testing. The public school system determined that those 2 children would have been in special education for their entire lives, that they had no hope to be in a regular classroom. And you know what? Not only did I educate them regular curriculum and all of that, but when they graduated, they went to college, and I never even told the college that they had any special needs. Wow. And there was no special accommodations, no extra time to take tests, none of that. They had to do it like any other kid, and they did fine.
Yeah.
Wow.
They would have been stuck in that special ed class with not a chance to grow and get back
And
into
to
the
know
normal.
that they could do it.
And be held back the whole time, and it's, I think in general, the American education system has become so rigid. Number one, it's been so dumbed down. We don't challenge kids anymore. We have completely gotten away from, practical application of any education. We don't do shop classes anymore. Most people don't. I don't know if some schools have that or not. Carpentry, all these things that would teach kids these hands-on, number one, learn other skills. Take a break from sitting there and looking at a chalkboard all day. But the other thing is, I think there's a large portion of kids in general that the system in which we are trying to teach doesn't work for them, and there is no accommodation. And we see that there's so many brilliant people out there that talk about, these
They
are
did
people
horrible
with
in school.
they have 150 plus IQs, brilliant folks that did terrible in school, that were told that they weren't going to amount to anything, and now they're out doing other things because they realize the school system was the problem, not them.
But how many of those people in the world that were told they were a problem, that they were the issue, and they would never amount to anything,
millions
that have not been able to push themselves to overcome any of that. And they gave up.
Said they're failures. And I mean, I will tell you, that just breaks my heart. It really does. I'm not saying that there aren't those situations in which a child really, they're not going to be able to perform that level and all of that.
100%.
But the point is, again, it's not supposed to be something that we give up on them. We always should encourage and support and help them reach their potential, whatever that potential is. And that, again, that was my goal as a teacher. Again, I know that there are many teachers who feel that way, but the system is just not set up for that. And that's really, really disheartening. And I will tell you that what you just mentioned just now, I have to just talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
And that is the vocational schools.
Yeah.
So SHOP, home ec, it's no longer called home ec, Family Consumer Services or whatever.
How to make a good wife.
Well,
I'm just joking.
it's a lot more than that.
I know
The point being, those things have left most public schools.
Yeah.
And it's now considered a special thing if you have access to that. Instead of it was a really good, every school offered it before. And where has that led to? Okay, we have a very high number of, I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of students who drop out of school. I know that for one of my brothers, shop was the thing that kept him in school. It is the thing that he did all the other subjects that were required, but it was shop that he loved. And to this day, he manages an out-of-shop store, just so you know. He's
Right.
successful, doing well, and happy. But again, one of the things I don't like about our lack of choices in West Virginia. So vocational schools came to the state as a multi-county center that they created and funded, the state decided to fund. And in order to protect that investment, that we're putting this money into this center,
Technical school.
we are making it a monopoly. So they are the only ones that can offer those things.
Really? I didn't
And
know
the
that.
local high schools cannot offer it.
Really?
And so the students have to, from the 3-county area, and I'm talking about here in the Eastern Panhandle, have to apply and compete for the spots at the vocational center, which is a great. James Rumsey, excellent. They're doing a wonderful job. So please don't take this as a criticism.
Sure.
But I have tried to introduce a bill for year after year after year to end the monopoly. I can understand in the beginning, okay, you put in a lot of millions of dollars. You want to make certain it's successful. Okay,
Sure.
wonderful. We have many more students applying than can make it. How about we end the monopoly and let the local schools provide more vocational things at the school? That bill has not passed.
Yeah.
Year after year.
Or maybe it's as simple as the student doesn't have a means to go over to the vocational center all the time and
Of
take that
course.
class.
So the way
have it at
it's set up now, they're going to be in a bus for 45 minutes or longer. And again, it totally changes your high school experience if you're going to the vocational center that's not in your county. But more importantly, we have many more kids interested in that than they have space for. So guess what that means? Open up more spaces in a real world environment, in a competitive environment.
If
That's
there's the
what would
demand,
happen.
the supply follows.
Well,
In a protected socialist one.
You know, I think one of the biggest wake-up calls to the education system, I don't know if it's big enough, but it's definitely the biggest that we've seen. And we definitely have seen a lot more folks move to homeschooling since COVID. We realized just how broken our education system is. And on top of that, how ideologically driven most of our schools are, whether that be teachers or the curriculum or whatever it is going on. I think there's a mix of things going on there. Let me ask you this, for those parents out there, because I'm going to put myself in that category, those parents out there that have really considered doing homeschooling, but are afraid to, for all the reasons that you outline, what would you say to them?
You absolutely can do it. If you love your child, you can homeschool. And really, that's the only requirement that's needed. Your children don't need money. They don't need fancy vacations. They do not need, really, like, if you give your child the opportunity to follow what they're passionate about, and you give them the opportunity and space in a safe environment, which is your home, to be able to explore and try new things, your child is going to have a completely different education than a public school can provide. And you can still, let's say you're nervous or you're scared, you can learn anything that you don't know.
Sure.
You can, there's so many resources now, and you can sign them up for courses in public school and still homeschool, just so you know. And you're entitled, because it's your tax dollars, to take 1, 2,
I want a
3.
teacher at my house on Monday.
But you absolutely, and there are private schools that will accept your children to teach them
Sure.
for that one subject you want them to learn. There are homeschool co-ops, so different parents take on different subjects. There are so many choices right now, including online courses and education programs. But the point being, the only requirement is if you love your child, you can do it. And there's plenty of help for you.
And I know, we've been so inculcated or conditioned in the U.S. that, hey, there's one way to do school, and if you want your kids to thrive, to, you know,
They have to be on a track.
they have to be, they have to go to public school. I mean, you have to go to public school, or the other option is private school. And I think you're right. You know, the reality is that I think that fear is almost silly. And I think at the end of the day, your kids, if you're homeschooling your kids, doesn't matter how terrible of a job you think you're doing or not. Now, I do know instances where we're homeschooling the kids and nothing's being taught, right? So there's the other part of that. But I think the average responsible parent that loves their kid, that really does want the best for them, it doesn't take much to compete with public school system, folks. You know, it really doesn't. Like, you know, every day my kids come home, like, what'd you learn today? Well, you know, not much. Like, you know, they're not being challenged. There's nothing there that's grabbing, holding, and keeping their attention. They're not passionate about going to school or learning. You know, I think we've reached the bottom. And I think one of the big things that people do need to do, and I'm talking to myself more than anybody, is like, you know what? If you're not happy with the system, number one, either run for government, start making some changes. And
Yes.
I love what you're telling me and some of the things you've been able to accomplish. But the other part of that is there is competition, and that competition is you. So take your kids out of that school system and educate them. And I think you'll be surprised at the outcome. I really do.
I will tell you again the huge difference it has made. The many successful homeschoolers that we can all thank that went before us, who were the pioneers. Colleges, the military, all of the different pathways
Yeah.
for, you know, adults. I have to tell you, they love homeschoolers.
They're much more accepting
They
of homeschoolers
love
now.
it. I mean, no longer requiring diplomas. Some of them do require standardized tests, like an
Sure.
ACT, SAT,
SAT, yeah.
or other standardized tests. But they accept homeschool parents' transcript. I just told them what my kids did,
Mm-hmm.
and they will bend over backwards to support and accept homeschoolers, because
That's
you know
awesome.
what they know? The higher ed institutions, they know the homeschoolers do great. They have very few problems when they get to higher
Mm-hmm.
education.
Do you know if there's any data? I'd almost like to see that. Is there SAT data comparing homeschoolers to public educated? Are you aware of any?
I think there is, yes.
Okay. I'm gonna
I
have to
don't
pull
have
that
it off
up.
the top of my head, but you can probably find it doing a Google search.
Yeah.
And there's organizations like the Homeschool Legal Defense Association that has tons of data of homeschoolers in comparison to other forms of education.
It's something that struck me on something you said earlier, and going back to, it kind of ties into talking about, you know, colleges now being more accepting of homeschoolers. I think also by removing vocational classes from high schools and things like that, you know, because when I was coming up, you were either college prep track or you were vocational school track, and it was one of the two, and that was it. And now you've kind of removed even the vocational classes for the students to try at the high school level.
Yeah.
So they feel like, well, if I'm not college prep, I'm no one.
Right.
You know, and it kind of
Right.
a sense of hopelessness there.
I love what our two-year colleges options are giving. And now in West Virginia, we have dual enrollment. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where you live. You can take classes at a community college or a four-year institution or a vocational school. And again, publicly funded. It's a lot more affordable if you are a middle school or high school student. And many people I know who homeschool their children, and their children graduate with already an associate's degree
I know a
completely
family like
and
that.
all paid for.
Wow.
And you know, the Hope Scholarship, if you choose to do that, can pay for doing enrollment courses. And it's just such a great advantage. And you're reducing college debt, you're reducing college time. And again, it's just such a great
You're
thing.
not funding these crazy colleges.
Hey, I mean, you want free college? There you go.
I will tell you, my children took advantage of it, and they took dual enrollment classes at Blue Ridge and at Shepherd College, and had great experiences, learned what they could handle, and it really helped them, some of them, to know college is not for me. And then I didn't have to waste money to discover that. We discovered it early on.
Or they may have discovered something that they're passionate about pursuing in college.
That's exactly right.
You know, no, that's awesome.
What do you think is as far as West Virginia specifically, what do you think are our greatest challenges from an education standpoint that you're seeing?
Well, definitely, teacher shortage is really, really a problem, and it doesn't matter if it's public or private schools.
But they say that that's a funding issue and they need more money.
Well, that's what they say.
Right.
I actually, the same learning experience that many parents had with COVID, where they realized, oh my goodness, what's going on in my public schools? And that's not something I agree with. There are many, many teachers that are disillusioned with the system and learned and realized that there's other options, that they can do something else with their life. And I think it's very hard for that profession to compete, yes, pay, but really respect.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but part of it is those teacher strikes, those unions that push to keep the schools closed, like it really cost a lot of folks to just become disillusioned with the teachers.
Yes,
And that's
I
really
agree with that.
disheartening because there were many good ones who opposed
Right.
those things, but they had no choice. And, the unions made the decisions and they felt like coerced into it. But also, again, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. So one of the most beautiful things about competition, right, is that you recognize that there may be better ways that I can do what I want to do, that I'm passionate about. So we have teachers that are starting micro schools. We have teachers that are leaving that system and finding out that I could tutor 20 students and get a similar salary to what I was getting without the stress, without being in a classroom of 45, without all the
Without the
bureaucracy.
administration and all that stuff.
And having to do things like, there's a lot of teachers who don't like the woke ideology. They don't agree, and they're being told, well, you have to use preferred pronouns and you have to, teach this stuff that
Well,
is
And that's
then the
another thing that COVID
teacher-
opened a lot of eyes as well. The teacher being disillusioned, like forcing to wear masks to school and things like that. They're
goodness.
like, this is not what I
and
want to
making
do.
the kids be 6 feet apart,
Right.
and you can't talk to each other during lunch. I mean,
Or
come
forced
on.
vaccination.
Yeah. So there's so many things. So now we're suffering the repercussions of it. I think it's a serious issue that we don't have enough teachers. And again, public, private, it's not just public schools. And then the other concern that I have is that even though we have the competition now, we still do not have public education understanding that they need to innovate. They need to change. So we still really need to find folks that want to do public education with an open mind to doing it differently. And that's really hard.
Folks, I just want to say right now, in just a second or two, we are going to start taking some questions. I'll let you ask us questions, and Senator Patricia here on a couple of things. One of the things I did want to ask you about was how much does federal funding affect public schools, in the sense that some of the things that I've seen is I really do feel like, the federal system is holding these schools hostages, making them stick to curriculum and to practices that I don't think is ultimately beneficial. What's your thoughts on that?
So there is a lot of federal influence in public education and education in general, but it's not always tied to money. They have many ways in which they influence.
Sure.
So yes, they're definitely guilty of things like they did with Common Core, where if you adopt this, we'll send you money. And if you don't adopt it, you get punished. You get less money. That definitely happens. But really, one of the ways in which the federal government is really influencing education, and I don't think in a positive way, is the way that they pick winners and losers. So they have our money, because that's what it is, our
Sure.
money. And with it, they pick contractors that they like who will write curriculum based on what they consider important. And it better have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Yeah.
and this woke ideology and what they consider to be a priority. They, like one of the things I discovered as a legislator that's just so disappointing. So in higher ed, if you're wondering why our higher ed institutions are so liberal, so the accrediting bodies actually dictate in their accreditation that you must have these policies and you must offer these courses and you
Or
must,
they're not accredited.
or they're not accredited. I mean,
Wow.
when did they start taking over what higher education institutions and how they run? But see, that is bureaucracy. That is government. That is why the founding fathers did not want government involved in these type of things. It's part of the nature of government to, again, we know better than you do. We're elitists and we're going to dictate and we're going to say this is what's best and what's not. So I don't know. It's disheartening. So certain things that we disagree with, and when I say we, I mean we conservatives. I understand there are those that may not be, but like, I do not want boys in a girl's bathroom.
No. Yeah.
Right now, currently, we cannot, as a state legislature, stop that because federal regulators have decided that we can't stop that. And yes, we definitely pushed the envelope. And we did pass in West Virginia. We're one of, I think, 14 states that passed a transgender sports, a bill relating to that.
Right.
Basically, our bill said if you want to play in girl sports, you must be a biological female. Very simple. We didn't even
Pretty
mention
crazy
the word
that we'd have to do
transgender.
that.
I know. Well,
But-
that's being challenged.
Yeah, no, I know.
And our Attorney General, who's awesome, Patrick Morrissey again, running for governor,
Yep.
is challenging all the way to the Supreme Court. He's going to fight to defend our law, but it's being challenged. And right now, currently not the law in the state of West Virginia because there's been an injunction placed on that law. And again, I don't know what to tell you. It is just insane that you even have to pass that law and that could even happen. And that right now, currently in the state of West Virginia, boys are allowed to go in a locker room with a girl and they're allowed to go in the bathroom with a girl. And
insane.
at the same time that they complain that there's so many people homeschooling and oh, how terrible. Well, that's like the number one thing I think causing parents to pull their kids
Yeah,
out.
that. But I do. I think, folks, that's one of the things that we need to get more serious about, and that is, create, opt out. If you don't like the system, and I think most of us agree that we don't like the system, we can complain, we can push for different things, and we should be doing all of those things, right? But I do think that the reality is we need to realize that we can all teach our kids. I still believe that the bar for public education is really, really low. And the average, not even college educated parent or anything else, the average American that, is working, decent amount of education, if you spent 12 years educating your kid, I think they would come out better than what we're seeing in most public schools. And I do. I think we got to, just shun those stereotypes, all those things that are being said about, like you said, that we're not socialized. Your kids are going to be all weird, not socialized, all those things that are constant, that you just constantly hear. And every time that I've come across, we have some really good friends, multiple friends that have homeschooled their kids. And
kids are awesome.
Most of those kids are not weird. I mean, there's a couple of them.
What's funny? Like they criticize homeschoolers for not being social and not whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you force those poor kids in the public school to be in a mass 6 feet apart, not talk to their friends, be in little cubicles,
Not run around outside.
for a year and a half.
They won't even let our middle school son at his school go outside for recess.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to go outside the school building because the teachers don't feel like being outside supervising them.
And we sure as heck don't push any sort of physical fitness anymore, which is destroying our entire population. That is something that's got to push forward.
But just real quick, something you said a second ago that you kind of got off track and didn't finish your thought. You said,
That's most of my thoughts.
I know, that's why I'm here. You said just opt out. It's the same principle of vote with your wallet.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
My New Year's resolution is trying to not buy Chinese made in any way, shape, or form, and even if I have to go without. Like I've been buying American for a long time,
Sure.
but now it's become I'm just not going to buy Chinese products of any way, shape, or form. I mean, you didn't bring up this subject, but I gotta tell you, we are in a war. We're in a war. They're trying to
absolutely
destroy us.
Something we talk about on this podcast all the time.
I got
but
a
yes.
presentation recently, like a few months ago, about how almost 95% of the fentanyl that they're finding is traced to China.
Yep.
They're purposely bringing it and shipping it here on purpose.
It's strategic. There's no doubt about it.
They're trying to kill us.
They're trying to destroy us
Well, and you know, unfortunately,
in
too,
every avenue they can.
I also think that we have some people that are elites in government and politicians that, you know, again, I can't see it any other way, is that some of these things are intentional in the fact that, like, you know, we're having this conversation about if something bad happened today and we suddenly were in a war with China, oh, we just start making everything here. Folks, we don't realize this, and I was reading a couple different articles talking about it specifically. Like, it would take us 4 or 5 years to even start being able to produce the things that we used to produce in America all the time. We'd have to build the plants, we'd have to find the sources. Like, we have gotten so far away from that they're like, if things got shut off tomorrow, like, we would have to completely rebuild, and we would be in a really bad spot for a very long time, and we'd be vulnerable strategically, militarily, for a really long time before we could even get to those production levels of all the important, you know, everything from steel to, like, we barely build cars in this country anymore. All the thing, you know, medicine, there's just a ton of different industries.
Even computer chips,
Computer
which
chips and
run our
computers.
entire world.
Yeah.
You know,
Right now, you know, one of the things they identified during the COVID was like, hey, look, we can't even make computer chips in this country. So they're starting to build some plants. Those plants are expected to be online, actually building computer chips in 12 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And they've already broken ground on them, but that's how long it's going to take. And we still don't have a control over the supply chain.
well,
on those.
and just from personal knowledge, talking to my parents who live in Georgia, where they're building one of the car manufacturers is building a big EV plant. Like, the plants that they are building are EV plants.
And China's laughing at us.
Yes.
You know,
They are laughing
and then they're
at us.
building battery plants for
Yeah.
it to support it, and it's like that's not feasible either.
No.
I don't know what to tell you. It is so disheartening. There's no quick turnaround, no such thing. And then to bring it full circle, we're not educating our population to work hard.
Yeah.
You look at the current kids graduating, and they are expecting high salaries without a lot of work. They are
No work ethic
quitting
whatsoever, yeah.
after just 2 weeks because their boss is expecting them to arrive on time. Like,
Yeah. Or they want to go out to a party that weekend and they can't work.
and
you know,
again, I do believe a lot of this has been intentional, but
agree.
we have a society right now that it's not a question.
Yeah.
If we have the factories
Yeah.
or the manufacturing brought back,
do we have the workers to run it?
I have everyday West Virginians whose businesses, when they retire, they're shutting it down because their own children aren't interested in doing what they did. You know, putting in 10-hour, 12-hour, 14-hour days, because that's what it takes to run a small business.
I got
And
up
then-
I got up at 5 this morning. I came home at 6 from work, and here we are tonight doing
And then
that.
you got a
so-
small business, and then an epidemic takes place, and the government shuts you down, forces you to close your doors while it promotes Amazon, Best Buy,
Target.
Walmart, Target, while all the mom and pop shops are forced. And then if they stand up for themselves and sit there and say, you know what, I'm not closing the door. Now we have, you know, people coming in and arresting them.
Yeah.
It is absolute insanity.
Just like the barber down in Inwood.
Civil wars were started over less than this. And that's the thing that we need to realize, folks, is we got to start pushing back, because I do think all the craziness that we've talked about, whether it's education, government, and everything else, I do think they're still the minority. But man, they have coalesced and they're pushing back with such a loud voice that while we sit back and we're just kind of taking it, we got to start pushing back. We got to start getting involved in government, especially local government. I think it's hugely important. Folks, what I want to do right now, Sean, if you will, if we got some questions, I know there's some up there. You can start throwing those up there. We will hit this up. All right. The first one's from David Draper. What about children of wartime veterans that have always thought there should be something more done. My question was actually too long. No, it's fine.
I know there are a lot of programs in place for
There are definitely scholarships
veteran
and things
children.
like that.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in West Virginia, we love our veterans so much. There is literally like nothing we won't do.
Yep.
So yes, they have scholarships, they have special services, they have tons of additional support in every single public institution. Again, we can't tell the private institutions what to do, but the public institutions, we essentially have a veteran support group for veterans and children of veterans and, military families. We have special laws for military families where their licenses are accepted, no matter where they got it, all sorts of things to try to help. Doesn't mean there isn't more things we could do. And if anybody has any ideas, I can assure you it will probably pass. That is one issue in which it's a
Those are easy
nonpartisan.
wins.
Everyone
Just
supports.
label it veteran and
Well,
it's good to go.
Anything we can do to help. And thank you for your service and for all those veterans that we have. God bless them.
Thank you. Yeah, as a matter of fact, they just passed some legislation regarding the property tax. How's that work?
Yes.
Yes. So it used to be you had to be 100% fully disabled to have an exemption on your property tax. And now West Virginia has passed it if you're 90% and above, which is a step in the right direction for veterans.
Of course, absolutely.
We need to get rid of property tax.
And we
in
exempted their
America, period.
military retirement.
Yes.
Yes, yes. I think that's been done for a little while now.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was within the last.
Yeah, folks, if you're out there and you're in a blue state and you're not happy, I'm telling you, West Virginia is that quiet little place that you need to come.
No, don't tell everybody. You're crazy.
No, Gary.
Don't bring your don't,
They're already
don't,
building
no,
houses
Gary.
over there.
don't bring your crazy relatives.
There's a lot of places in lots of parts of West Virginia, middle, central.
Out west is beautiful.
Go out. West Virginia, I've heard is where to be. What's another question we got up there? For Senator Rucker, what's her opinion on the amount of money one needs to be electable?
Well, I think you said you had two.
Pack checks
Pack
the first
checks.
time. Okay. I'm
You
not.
had a lot of miles on your car and
Oh,
miles
yes.
on your shoes, though.
Oh, yes. I've worn out shoes. In terms of the amount of money, it really depends on what you're running for. So a general rule is you need $1 per vote. So if you know how many votes you need, basically raise at least $1 for every single vote that you need. That's just a very general rule. In the delegates, they have a much smaller district, and most delegates in the state of West Virginia raise around $30,000. For a state senate race, which is a lot larger district, the average amount is $50,000 or $60,000. And of course, there are some who raise a lot more. Obviously, it depends on what area. I happen to be fortunate enough to be in the most expensive area to campaign in the entire state because we're so close to DC and it's so great. But having said that, the most I ever raised was $69,000. So just to put it out there, even though I've been faced with opponents that raised a lot more, I've been able to win with, what I consider to be, I still think it's crazy. $60,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a crazy amount of money. But yeah, and you made up that difference just through work. That's amazing.
Yep.
What's your opinion on states like Colorado and Maine trying to ban Donald Trump from being on the ballot? I think that is the best measure ever. Now go ahead.
Obviously, they're insane. Just have completely misread that constitutional amendment, and it won't survive. Thethere's no way it will survive.
It's being asked to go to
It's
the
being
Supreme
challenged.
Court.
It's going
Yeah.
to again.
Failed in Michigan and a couple
I
other.
gotta tell you, there's no way we'll survive because they know, first of all, that if you start interpreting that language that way, it will be used against President Biden.
100%.
It will be used against the Democrat. You don't want to go down that path. Even the liberals realize this is a bad path to go.
Well, he wasn't charged with that crime, and he sure as heck wasn't convicted of insurrection. So it's Looney Tune liberals being Looney Tune liberals.
Well, they're trying to see what they can get away with, and honestly, a lot of trying over the past few years they've gotten away with a lot.
I guess I didn't realize that you didn't have to be a lawyer to be an attorney general, because apparently the attorney general in Maine.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, she has no law degree.
There's your calling, Gary.
Again,
You can argue with anybody.
Yes, he can. I told him he
baby.
should have been a lawyer.
I don't ever argue.
just I think yesterday I happened to have a discussion with one of my children. They were asking, how is it that we allowed the left to get away with everything that they're getting away? Like, how did that happen? And I'm not saying I know the answer, but as a mom, I gave her an answer. And I told her, honestly, those of us on the right, those of us are conservative-minded, we don't want to be involved in politics. We don't want to be involved in we want to live our
Government's
lives, raise our children.
We're too busy working.
We
and-
don't
Yeah.
care to tell other people how to live their lives. That problem is that those who do care about telling people how to live their lives, they're the ones going into politics and they're the ones going into government. And I raised this up when you asked this question about what's these crazy people who are running for office. If you don't want to see that happen, then even if you don't want to run for office, you have to consider running for office. You need to consider, if you're a good, common sense individual who loves
Rolls
liberty,
me out.
I'm sure you could run. I mean, the point being, we need good people to run because then we actually have a choice.
I got a good wife that we need to get her elected.
Oh, geez.
Not you.
The other one. Jeez. Jeez. Oh.
Senator, do you ever see West Virginia doing away with personal property tax?
Oh, this is a
That is
great
one that's near and
question.
dear to my heart.
Both as a business owner as an individual.
That's a great question.
I'll just
I think
preface
it's
this by
your new
saying-
bill you're coming up with, right?
Well,
I was blown away when we became a business owner and I started getting a demand from the local tax office that I had to file a property tax return for my business inventory
yes.
every July.
It's insane, and we've tried to change it. So Republicans are definitely unified in wanting to do something about it. I like, it makes me sad talking about it. We proposed a constitutional amendment for the voters to give us the ability to do that because unfortunately, whoever wrote the Constitution of West Virginia put it in the Constitution,
Right.
believe it or not. And
On what exactly?
property taxes is in the West Virginia Constitution, and it actually tells us not only that we have to charge it, but how much.
Personal
in
property
the West
tax?
Virginia Constitution,
For- or
personal
for businesses?
property taxes. There's different terms for it. Like
Okay,
there's
gotcha.
ad valorem taxes and all these different terms. But the point is, it's in the Constitution. So
Get us an amendment.
we put an amendment for you voters to give us the right to reduce and eliminate. And, you know, it will have to be in a graduated process. Like, we can't do it in one day. It's
Sure.
impossible. But the voters rejected it.
Well, I'll
Except
be honest.
for Berkeley County. Berkeley County was the only county in the state of West Virginia who passed it.
I'll be honest, the language on the ballot was very confusing and no one knew what it was about. There was not enough prior education.
So here's the problem.
Yeah.
And not, okay.
Because I did a little research and I
do
figured
not-
out what it was about and I told him, I was like, you got to vote this for this
I
one on the
don't
ballot.
want to blame the voters.
Sure.
Yes, the language is confusing, but you do understand if you're proposing a constitutional amendment, you have to use
Yes.
proper legalese in doing it.
Yes.
Unlike a law, which we can really dumb down and simplify, and I fight for that all the time, language be understandable by just the average West Virginian. The Constitution is a little bit trickier,
Sure.
and you do need to be more, precise and use, language that is precise. And you're right, it is confusing to the average person. But voters could have found out it was in
Exactly.
papers.
Like
it was
me.
on social media.
I did some research. I did some quick Googling and
I
figured it
can
out.
tell you, all the
Yeah.
Republicans were on radio, were on media. They were talking about it at every forum.
With that being said, I don't remember. I mean, we kind of knew about it, but I didn't see anything. And I
told
listened.
you about it.
I know, but I'm saying I listen to talk
Yes.
radio a lot. I try to stay informed. I try to stay informed with local issues. I never saw it until we were getting ready to go vote, and she was telling me about it. She's like, "Hey, you want to vote for this?" And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome. This is definitely going to pass in West Virginia." And then
Right.
when we got done, we were like, a couple days later, and I'm like, "Man, it had to be the language on there." I just don't.
But it's like, what can we do,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And then, of course, the media is never going to be on our side.
Right.
All
That's the key there.
And I don't know, like, I could tell you, I tell my constituents, I tell them, like, if the media is against it, then you probably should support it. Because, like, they're almost always going to oppose anything that's good for you,
Yes.
for the citizens.
So do you think that will be brought up again? Is there
I
a chance
hope
of that?
So you or the person that was asking, are we ever going to do it? Yes, I think so. If Republicans stay in the majority, yes, we'll keep at it. We're definitely not giving up. But having said that, I doubt we're going to propose it anytime soon because, like you said, we need to make certain that the voters are with us and that they're educated so that we're not
Wasting your time.
wasting our time. And you also don't want to be like proposing it again and again and again and
Yeah.
again. It just becomes like
It's not easy to get an amendment pushed to begin with, much
No.
less, if you're going to push an amendment to the Constitution of the state, you better have your ducks in a row.
I will tell you, if we get a conservative governor elected, one who will think the way we do, it would be a huge help. And that was one of the things that hurt this amendment, is that we had a governor who was not supportive of it and was telling folks to not support it. Having a governor who actually supports it. So like, obviously the governor has a much larger audience and ability to communicate than 134 legislators. So that would make a huge difference.
You'd think a guy that owed so much in taxes would want to
Do away
reduce
with
taxes.
She's like, I'm not. Mum's the word here. She's like, I'm not saying
Was
anything.
good for the goose. All right, what other questions do we have up there? Should we end payroll taxes? Ooh, that's a little weird. Well, you go ahead on that.
I think payroll taxes is something that the federal government
It is.
mandates. I think,
You can have payroll taxes if you have state taxes coming out of your.
but I will tell you. So obviously, we're for eliminating income taxes. We've started the process. We reduced it by 21% in our last session. We set up a mechanism so as we get more surpluses and we stay fiscally responsible, the income tax is going to continue to reduce. So there's good news there.
There's also good news in the property tax arena where,
Yeah.
if you've paid your property tax on time, you can get a credit for the full amount you've paid.
And that's the only way we could get around the fact it's still in the Constitution.
Right.
So when
so there's progress in the right direction.
Yeah, when we pass the constitutional amendment, it makes a lot more sense to just eliminate it versus this game of sending it and paying you back. But
Right.
Folks, to me, I think when it comes to taxes, property taxes is the biggest thing in my mind because as long as you're paying taxes on your property, you're never
renting it.
own anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
You never own anything. One of the big things that started the revolution in this country was the fact, for the right to private property, and then through just nonsense and erosion of our ideals, we started allowing these property taxes. I don't like payroll taxes. I don't like income taxes. I don't like sales tax. I don't like any tax because I think the government does a piss poor job with our money. I think most of the
They're
time
not
we'd be
good
better off
stewards.
just putting it in a pile and setting it on fire. At least it wouldn't go to our enemies overseas, which is where most of our money goes.
Yes.
But with that being said, man, I think if there was a state that came out that eliminated all property taxes tomorrow, I'd be moving there. But West Virginia is headed in the right direction right now. They're basically number one for veterans. If you're over 90%, they're going to get rid of your property tax in that, and then they're also going to give you a rebate. How does that work right now?
on
You
your
have the expert sitting right here.
personal on your vehicles.
Yep.
Right
Yeah.
now,
Personal
currently
property,
it's
yep.
just that. We will reimburse you your taxes that
And
you
that's
paid
for
on it.
everyone, not just veterans.
Everyone.
For veterans, it's the real estate tax on your house. It's the
Yes.
property
House.
tax on your real estate.
Yeah.
And we're working to also expand the homestead exemption for those who are, of a certain age, and that will help all older folks. Anyways, there's a lot more that we're wanting to do, and because the Republicans have stayed to a set budget, and we don't expand and grow our government, and we've done a pretty good job of that. And we've made good decisions. We are growing. We have had surpluses year after year. And let me tell you, when we got elected, there were no surpluses. It was the opposite. So it's I think, a good avenue for the future. And yes, for this upcoming year, we have surpluses also expected. And so we can decide to give you back more money.
I wonder
And
how many
I'm
states
certainly
can
gonna
say
fight
they
for
have a
that.
surplus in the budget.
Oh, one of the other things that West Virginia passed was last year as far as firearms and ammunition. Right now, if you buy firearms
It
and
was right after
ammunition,
COVID.
when you buy firearms and ammunition here in the great state of West Virginia, you do not pay taxes on
And
it, sales tax.
trust me, I tell everyone who walks into our shop that.
So
buy it here, folks.
buy it here, folks. Let's see. Jeff says, getting questioned. Can we expect? Now we're getting to some federal stuff, but can we expect the NFA and will the ATF be brought under control one day?
I mean, I sure hope so. I think, again, a change of administration is important for that.
Speaking of change, I think you need to take Shelley Capito's spot. That's
Oh,
where-
boy.
I think she's the right one that we get up there at the everyone the
Well,
Richmond
then she's
north
going
of
to be looking
Richmond.
for someone to take her spot.
That's true.
I will show you other. Well, listen, folks. We got one more question. What's your opinion on the job Joe
Chris
Manchin
has
has
a-
done for
a good
West
question,
Virginia?
too.
Okay,
Okay.
Chris. No, we're not taking his question.
Well,
Well, let's do the Joe Manchin one first.
real quick, the Joe Manchin.
Yep.
Senator Joe Manchin has actually been a very good senator. He really, truly has tried to represent West Virginia. I think he truly cares about the people of West Virginia.
I agree with that.
Now,
I think he's a little misguided, but sure.
do I agree with all his policy decisions? Absolutely not. But I will tell you that there's a reason for why he has gotten elected over and over again. He truly does respond to constituents' needs. If a veteran needs help, I can tell you his staffer is gonna respond to that call, and that's how it is with most constituents, and I appreciate that. And as a legislator who sometimes has to go to the feds to say my constituent needs so and so, I'm very grateful for the work that him and his staff have done to help constituents.
Joe Manchin is definitely one of the very, very few kind of traditional Democrats we have left, to the point where most of his caucus doesn't even like him. And I think he's retiring. Isn't he retiring? I
He
think
is
he's
retiring.
not.
Well, he says he's open to further opportunities. in
Well,
the
I think
future.
he was thinking about running for president, but that's not going to work. He's not going to do well there.
What was Chris's question? There you go. I think she kind of already hinted at this several times, Chris, but can you let us know who you would support as the next West Virginia governor? Because everything you have said this evening, we as the majority believe wholeheartedly in.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I have no problem letting you know that I have endorsed Patrick Morrisey for governor. I think he would make an excellent governor. He is a conservative. He is a constitutionalist. And in every single way, he has basically been on the same side I have been. And if it hadn't been for him, he has not only taken on a lot of the federal overreach, but he really has defended of West Virginia values over and over again.
I don't know how many lawsuits he's filed against the Biden administration, but I've been really impressed at how aggressive, basically him and Kim Paxton have been kind of leading the charge as far as, state attorneys, generals really fighting back against the overreach of the Biden administration, which has been just insane. Well, folks, listen up. All right, our last one right here, Senator Rucker.
What
is your EDC?
everyday carry?
Everyday carry. What's your everyday carry
I
gun?
had to ask that question.
You can tell them none of your
You can
business.
tell them none of your business if you want.
44 Magnum. Eat it, sucker.
So I will tell you that I am shopping for something that is more discreet, but I have a 38 Ruger.
All right.
Carry.
Well, we'll get you up at the shop. We'll take care of you.
Yeah.
I'll get you out on the range. We'll go have some
I
fun.
appreciate that.
Well, listen, folks, we really appreciate you tuning in. Senator Rucker, I can't tell you how much I've really enjoyed this, and I think we just barely touched the surface. We
Yeah.
definitely need to get you back. Anytime you have any initiative that you want to push, that we can help you in any way possible, make
Somehow
sure you
we
reach
could
out to
educate the
us.
voters when things are coming on the ballot.
Send me posts to put on social media. Anytime you're like, Gary, I just want to talk to people of West Virginia. Anything that we can do that you'd like that we can help you with, let us know. We'll
I so
do that.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time and doing this. I think this means a lot. I think it's something that most politicians just don't do. And I think it says a lot about your character. And I think you're the exact right person in the exact right place. So we're proud of you as West Virginians.
We are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Well, all
All
right,
right.
folks, we're going to wrap it up. But listen, we really appreciate you tuning in. I know the format was very different than normal, but I thought it was important that we kind of stay focused and just kind of did a more traditional interview.
Look at Mike's comment.
What's that?
Mike Hen says, I'll sponsor her for a level 1 and 2 class.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. We will. I think you can put that off as a campaign contribution.
Kind contribution.
We might want to look into that. We might want to talk to a lawyer about that one, guy.
Anyway.
All right, folks, listen, we really appreciate you tuning in, and we got a lot more coming. We've been doing a lot of, we're talking about different ways that we can improve this podcast and make it even better for 2024. So stay tuned for that. And what else we got going on? Folks, we're going to have the training schedule. We're going to do our best to get that up this week. We will have it up, so make sure you enroll in courses. For those of you that haven't already, make sure you go enroll in the XP Long Range Academy courses. Those are filling up. I'm excited about that this year. And we're looking at putting some Gaskin courses on that as well. So going to be a great time. Anything else?
Nope, not today.
Anything else? Make sure you subscribe, like, comment. Make sure you go sign up to Substack. Go check out our Patreon. If you want to support our work we do, the way to do it is over on Patreon and buying all your stuff from Paramount Tactical Solutions. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.